Hi, Doug. How are you today?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm very excited for today's episode of Midlife Unleashed. This is episode 5 already. And
Okay.
today we're going to be talking about a very hot topic, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
about
Extremely
GLP-1
hot.
medic. It is. About GLP-1 medications, the weight loss game changer. GLP-1 medications have been talked about quite frequently and seems like everywhere you go lately, you're kind of hearing about one or the other. So medications, for example, like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro are really taking the weight loss world by storm, sparking both excitement and controversy. Some call
Right?
them a miracle solution, and some others warn the risks of misuse. So, on today's episode of Midlife Unleashed, you are going to break down the science, clear up some myths, and provide a realistic guide on how and if these medications should be used. So,
Wonderful.
I'm
Wonderful.
excited. So let's jump right in, Doug. So I know you work with real patients every day. What are you currently seeing happening with GLP-1 drugs in your practice?
Yeah, so we work with people with semaglutide and tirzepatide. So the compounded version of the Ozempic and the Mounjaro, Wegovy, Zepbounds, all of those. And in the past year and a half, we probably helped 400 people lose over 10,000 pounds. So we've seen a lot of people come in and I've seen a lot of people do it right. I've seen some people do it wrong. And what I've noticed is I've noticed a lot of things. I've noticed a lot of things, but I do want to preface before I talk about the situations that I'm aware of and the people that I've worked with is that my clinic's very different. So, we provide extensive instruction, right? A lot of oversight, ongoing support. Our patients are getting much better overall results, and they're having a much better experience and comfort while using these medications. So we see our patients weekly. They don't control the dosing. The medical staff controls the dosing. I do the health coaching. So we're teaching them how to balance their blood sugar and eat properly for the medication, as well as when they get off the medication. Exercise is included. So it's a comprehensive approach. And based off of that, what I've seen is some pretty impressive results. People are losing weight very consistently. Those that follow our guidelines are getting amazing results. I am seeing some people, or most people, lose some muscle, which initially was concerning, but we monitor that along. If they're losing muscle because they're not eating enough and they're not exercising or they're not eating enough protein, then we kind of nip that in the bud. But there is some there is some muscle loss. As long as it's not significant, we're okay with it. I am seeing people who are not following the guidelines, who are struggling until they eventually do. So it's not necessarily the quick fix that a lot of people think it is, or that they've heard on the internet or seen on social media. So I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot. But ultimately, I know that if you use these medications in conjunction with some lifestyle change and some sound nutritional practices, they are 1000% a game changer. 1000% a game changer.
Absolutely. And talking about game changer, Doug, let's even go back a little and just start with the basics. So, what exactly are GLP-1 medications and how do they work in the body?
Okay, so GLP-1 medications, they kind of mimic the glucagon-like peptide, GLP, that we actually have in our gut. So we have this hormone in our gut and it's activated when we eat. And when we eat, basically it sends a signal to our brain that we're full and we stop eating. So this helps to kind of control hunger. This helps to make sure that your caloric intake isn't too high. And so that's one of the ways that the medication works to kind of help us lose weight. It also helps with insulin regulation. So it enhances that insulin response, which helps improve our blood sugar. And then lastly, it kind of helps with our metabolism, because one of the things that the medication does is it slows down that gastric emptying process. And when it slows down that process, excuse me, that kind of supports glucose metabolism. And then in terms of that kind of helps with our body fat. So it helps in primarily three ways. It helps support our insulin response. It helps with our caloric intake or calories or controlling our hunger. And then it helps with our metabolism.
In terms of those things, metabolism and insulin, and when it comes to hunger, how does it affect your appetite? Is it just basically a suppressant, or how does it affect the hunger?
Yeah, it's much more than an appetite suppressant. So yes, it does help kind of impact your hunger, right? It can help with some cravings. Again, it sends that signal to your brain much sooner now, so you're going to eat less, and that's part of losing weight. We all know that. But it also helps with blood sugar stabilization. It also helps with improving insulin sensitivity. It also helps reduce inflammation in the body. It also helps with improve some cardiovascular markers. It also helps with your metabolic health. So that is a lot more than the typical appetite suppressant. And that's why I believe that these medications have been so successful, because they do more than just help people eat less. Although some people abuse that and they think that that's the only way that they work, and they try to just use it to really kind of suppress their appetite, which is not really a good use of the medication.
Absolutely. It definitely sounds like, in terms of people hearing about GLP-1 medicines, that there is a lot of confusion about it. And obviously, as you just stated, there is definitely more to it than just being an appetite suppressant.
Mhm.
And the way that the medication works seems like it does a lot more. So, can you talk a little bit more about how it offers more than just being an appetite suppressant, in terms of how you mentioned it regulates blood sugar and insulin sensitivity, metabolic health? Like, how does it really help with all of those things specifically?
Yeah, so as we age, we become a little bit more insulin resistant, which is type 2 diabetes. And as you know, everyone knows these medications were diabetes medications,
Right.
right? And the doctors were reporting back that these, patients were losing weight, hence the weight loss study that was done in conjunction with the FDA to get the medication approved as a weight loss medication. So obviously it helps with insulin sensitivity, and it helps with blood sugar stabilization. You don't want your blood sugar going too high. Once it goes too high, we've talked about this before, that insulin comes out, grabs up all that sugar and kind of stores it. It helps to reduce inflammation, which makes everything function better, right? The less inflammation we have in our body, the better our organs will function, the better our health will be. And then, with some of the cardiovascular markers, it's pretty impressive. I mean, I think the medication has been approved for people who have had heart disease and certain other, heart issues. And so, calling this an appetite suppressant is a little bit, I don't want to say naive, but it's not giving it its full due. So it does do a lot more, and they're researching this medication on so many different diseases that you'll be hearing a lot more about how it's being used and how effective it is with helping people with different health conditions. So it's impressive.
Absolutely. And I feel like it is something that people started hearing about pretty recently. I'd say like maybe within like the last year, year and a half or so. So it definitely, I can see it becoming something that's helpful in a lot of other health areas, health issues rather, like you stated.
Sure, we're at the beginning right now.
Mhm.
So I'm sure both of these companies, Lilly and Novo, are doing significant amount of studies, on different situations, fatty liver, sleep apnea, more with cardiovascular and other issues. So they're doing the research, and if it comes out that it helps people to improve their health in different areas, then I think that's a good thing. They're actually doing research on these medications with addiction as well. So there's a lot more to come, but we've seen how they can impact weight loss quite impressively, especially when it's combined with that healthy lifestyle.
Absolutely. I'm curious to know more about how it will work for those with addiction. I've heard, for example, does help with sleep apnea with people losing weight. And I've actually have friends who've had sleep apnea and taken it and it's benefited them. So it's definitely going to be an just interesting moving forward to see who else it helps and how it can help more and more people.
Sure, sure.
And with so much buzz around these drugs, everyone's heard about it by now, but who are they actually intended for? Are they just for people who want to lose, let's say, 10, 15, 20 pounds, or are they meant for a more serious weight loss case?
Well, they were approved by the FDA for people with a BMI over 30. All right, so that's the guideline. They also were approved for people with a BMI over 27 with one comorbidity. So people who have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, metabolic syndrome, anything like that. So that's who they were approved for. That includes a lot of people, including myself, right? And so I'm short. I'm not short. Scratch that. No, I'm a shorter
Sure.
person with a lot of muscle on my body,
Hmm.
and so my BMI is over 27. And I take a low dose hydrochlorothiazide for blood pressure. I guess you can call it blood pressure. And so it's actually for water retention. And so I qualify. Now, do I need these medications? No. Am I taking these medications? No. But that opens the field as to who can actually take them. So if you fall into those categories, according to the FDA, you are qualified to take those medications.
So it definitely sounds like there's a huge population of people who would qualify for these medications.
In this
And
country, I'm going to say 70%.
absolutely. And I
70%.
know So, and I've heard cases and I know of people getting these medications online or some prescribed or some through doctors and pharmacies. But let's be real, we know that a lot of these people are getting these drugs just online and maybe using them without medical supervision or under the watch of any type of provider or physical help or any kind of professional. So are there dangers of taking GLPs without the proper guidance? And if so, what would you say some of those dangers are?
Of course there is. Of course there is. And I think some people are nuts because they're out here trying to play doctor, right? And they're not. And they might have slept at a Holiday Inn Express last night, but that doesn't qualify them to determine how they should be taking and using these medications. And so there's a couple things there. I mean, purchasing the medication online, you're really not sure what you're getting. I'm not trying to down the online folks. I don't particularly care for that model at all, but some of them are selling qualified quality medication that is what it says it is, that will help people lose weight. Some of them aren't. And so if you're not really sure what you're getting and you're purchasing it online, then you might run into some problems because of that. Then there's the medical screening. The online medical screening is not very good. And so if you're not being screened properly, then you may not have the best experience with these medications, and it may cause some other problems. So that's the first thing. It's the quality of the medication. But if you stick with the bigger companies, I think you're going to be fine. The second thing is that people are being left up to themselves to kind of manage this process, and there's no medical supervision involved. And that's dangerous. And that's dangerous because in this country, if something is good, we believe more is better. And that's not really ideal for someone taking these medications. So if it's being delivered to your home, you're drawing it up, you're determining what the dosage is. I can just see in my head people saying, well, I didn't lose much last week, I'm going to try this much. And people are going online and TikTok and social media, and they're getting their advice not from a medical professional, but somebody who has experienced weight loss and is saying this is the way you do it, when they've got a completely different body and you don't even know what their situation is. So there are significant, issues that you can run into by taking too much of the medication. I mean, you can, have some serious gastrointestinal problems, issues, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. That can lead to electrolyte imbalance or dehydration, which is going to cause a whole bunch of other issues. You can, if you're increasing the dosage too much, you can have blood sugar issues. It could be too low. Now you're dizzy. Now you got all these other issues going on. And, you can cause pancreatitis. There's just a bunch of issues that can happen by taking any medication, but these medications, since we're talking about them, and not having good quality medical advice and support and oversight. And that really doesn't happen in an online environment at all. At all.
Absolutely. And I know, going back to the proper way to use it, you touched on a proper screening and how some online providers or whoever's providing this medicine online may not do a proper screening. What is a proper screening for those who may be listening who are interested in doing it and maybe looking online, for example?
Sure. Well, I can give you some insight as to how we do it in my clinic, but the medical director who's qualified in this area, who works extensively in medical weight loss day in and day out, does all the screening. So that's the first thing. You got someone who's been working with these medications since before they were popular, who's actually doing the screening. So the qualification of the screener is the first thing. So not just someone who's popping up online, who's asking some simple questions, looking at your BMI, saying you qualify, boom. You know, so with us, you need to fill out paperwork for us online so that the nurse practitioner can actually review it prior to your actual consultation. So, and it's pretty extensive. She wants to know about your health history. She wants to know all the medications that you're on for contraindications, if there's anything. She wants to know everything that you've tried. She wants to know your medical history. She wants to know your experience with weight loss, which is huge because sometimes your background or your history with weight loss can indicate some other things that need to be addressed that the medication won't. And so she's going into a pretty extensive process, about 45 minutes, depending upon your health history, looking at your blood work, making sure that not only are you qualified for these medications, but you're going to have a good experience and a safe experience while you actually use them. So that's what a good, more comprehensive consultation or medical review will do. But I think the first thing is you got to have the person who's qualified, who can ask the question and follow up questions related to where you are with your health. And then making sure that they're doing and they have the knowledge to do what's in your best interest.
Absolutely. And being, for example, you're a trusted expert in this space, as well as people that work at your practice, like you said, that kind of do this intake and this question, I'll go through these questions with you. Beyond that, are there things that are required, for example, like a doctor's appointment or anything of that nature that goes along with that intake process?
Yeah, well, first I speak with them just to go over the basics and prices and get their health history, tell them about what we do and talk about the nutrition and exercise and how we kind of bring all of this together to make sure that they want to go forward to meet with the medical staff. Once they actually fill out all the paperwork and meet with the medical staff, then what we do is if they're approved, then they come in and then we get them on our biometric scale to get all of their numbers. How much muscle do they have? How much fat do they have? How hydrated are they? And so we go through all of this information and I kind of build a customized nutrition plan for them, but we use that as the starting point and we can chart their process all along. And meanwhile, on a weekly or monthly basis, depending upon where they're coming from, they meet with our in-house nurse and she actually administers the shots. So there's no you figuring out how much of a dose you should get. It's actually managed by a medical professional who is overseen by the nurse practitioner and the medical director. So it's a very organized plan to help you get the results that you're looking for safely and soundly.
And sounds
Excuse
like
me.
it's very specific to each individual for
It
sure.
has to
So,
be.
and is this like when people come in and the nurse administers the shots to them, is it specific to them how high their dose changes per week or how things, it's obviously not a one size fits all kind of thing. So,
Sure.
in terms of like, let's say people losing some weight and then they come in for X amount of time, can people vary how long they're on these medicines, or is it something that's most people take for 3 months, 6 months, or is it something that also varies based on each
Yeah,
individual?
Yeah, it does excuse me, it does vary based on the individual and their goals. And their goals. So, someone coming in 300 pounds, may want to lose 100 pounds. Well, yeah, that's going to take a year.
Hmm.
That's going to take some significant time and some significant lifestyle changes. Someone coming in to lose 20 to 50 pounds, that's going to take a shorter amount of time, but it also depends on how well they adhere to the guidance and the information and how well they're doing in that category. So it varies by individual. There's no stress that we put on people to lose at a certain time. What we do is we emphasize the importance of following the guidelines that we provide and actually building healthy habits. And if that means your weight loss, you hit your goal in 6 months. If that means you hit it in 3 months, if that means you hit it in 12 months, that totally is based on the individual. In terms of the medication and the increases on the medication, that again is done by the medical staff based on the guidance that was put out by the FDA. So you don't just get to walk in and say, "Oh, I didn't have a good week. I want to go up on my dose." Like that doesn't happen at our
It doesn't
place.
work like that.
I know I know it happens at other places because those people end up coming to us when they want some sound support and services. But no, that doesn't we don't operate like that.
Absolutely. And it sounds like these GLP-1 medications, obviously, like we touched on, is very specific to each person, but it sounds like people can take it to lose 20 pounds or 100 pounds or 150 pounds plus or
Sure.
things like that. So is that true? How much have you seen? What's the most, I guess, dramatic weight loss that you've seen one of your patients lose with these GLP-1 medicines? 100 pounds?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've had someone lose 100 pounds. We've got the whole gamut. We've had the whole gamut since we've been there. We've had people lose 20, 25. 40, 50 is a nice sweet spot. I would say, I wouldn't say on average because we really don't keep that statistic, but we've got people from 25 to 100 and so on. I mean, you can see them on our website and you can see them on our Google reviews, all across the board. And again, that's because it's customized and everybody's different. Everyone's got different goals walking in the door. Everybody gets healthier though. I can tell you that much. There's a stat out there that was reported that 30% of the people that start these medications stop within 30 days.
Oh, wow.
We're at zero. We don't have people come in and stop in 30 days. That just doesn't happen. There's just too much guidance, too much support, too much follow up. They're getting the right information. They feel good, so they're not feeling like, oh, I can't do this anymore. So so yeah, so we've got numbers from 0 to 80, or 0 to 100, I should say. Well, I shouldn't say zero because we don't have any zeros, but 25 to 100 pounds, and it's customized.
That's amazing. And then correct me if I'm wrong in my assumption, but though let's say that 30% of people who are not obviously working with you or a medical professional that stop, why do you think that is? Because they don't, aside from not having that guidance, is it just they don't know what to
It's the
do? They're not.
guidance. I think the guidance is huge. I think the medical oversight is important. Um, I think that they're not making the changes necessary to actually support them while they're on the medication. So there may be some frustration there. And they just may not feel well. I'm guessing that they're just not feeling well on the medication as well. So it's unfortunate because I think given the right support and guidance, I think they would be successful. And I think like most people would be successful given the right support.
The right support and knowledge and tools definitely sound like it's a crucial part of taking a GLP-1. And
Sure.
Doug, let's talk even a little bit more long term.
Yep.
So let's say someone lost 20, 50, 100 pounds, whatever the amount of weight loss is. Do you think that people can keep the weight off once they stop taking these medications, or is this the kind of medication that someone has to take forever?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I've seen people get off the medication and maintain their weight loss. So, yes. So, I know that they've seen on TV and seen the specials and heard people say you got to take it for the rest of your life. Well, for some people that applies to. All right. But if you're trying to lose the weight and get off the medication, which is what we help people do, it is totally viable to do that. Now, certain things have to be put in place and you got to do certain things in order to do so. But to think that you're going to take this medication and you're going to take it for the rest of your life and you're just trying to lose 50 pounds, I just don't agree with that, and I haven't seen that, and I've seen some of the opposite. You know, now some people do need to stay on the medication for their own maintenance or some other medical conditions, but still they should be on a as low a dose as possible to do that, right? But in terms of taking the medication, losing the weight, and getting off of the medication and living a healthy lifestyle, 100% doable. Now, there's certain things that have to happen in order to do so, and I'll be glad to share some of that with you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was wondering. So if you could
Yeah,
shed
yeah,
some
I'm
light.
not going to share it all with you because my clients pay, for our services, and I don't want to be giving away something that they're paying a premium for, but I'll give you some guidelines.
Doug, I'm here trying to get the secrets.
I know, and I'm gonna give you some of the secret sauce, but I can't put it all out there. But I mean, because we even coach a lot of clients who actually are getting the medication from their doctor's office. So we developed this reputation that we can support people outside of just the medication. So even people who don't get the medication from us pay for a service for us to actually guide them and help them with our expertise in house. So if someone's
Awesome.
paying for it, I can't just blurt it out over the air. But here's what you need to
I
do.
guess.
Here's what you need to do. Here's some tips. The first thing you got to do is you got to have a clear mindset when you start. So everything starts with the mind with me, and it's a mindset. Stephen Covey said you got to begin with the end in mind, and you do. You got to know that, or you got to go in with I'm going to lose this many pounds, and then I'm going to come off of this medication and live this healthy lifestyle. So if you don't go in with that, then you're not going out off the medication, excuse me, without some sort of weight gain, or maybe gaining it all back. I'm not sure. But the mindset is very, very important. You got to start there. And then second, you got to understand what a healthy lifestyle is. right? Because if you're going to come off the medication, you're going to need to live and operate under a healthy lifestyle. People don't know what that is. So you got to learn that while you're on the medication. So as you come off of it, you can actually live that healthy lifestyle. So I'll give you a couple examples to convince people to eat carbs. So even on these medications, people still don't want to eat carbs. They want to turn this into a no carb diet. And that's not a healthy lifestyle. It's not a sustainable lifestyle. So you shouldn't be doing that. And you should be learning how to eat carbs while you're on the medication. So you got to know what a healthy lifestyle looks like, including stress management and sleep. Third thing I would say you got to do is you have to maintain as much muscle mass as possible while you're on the medication, right? So muscle helps is a key indicator of your metabolism. It needs energy. Muscle needs energy. Energy is food. So the more muscle you have, the more you can eat. So you want to make sure that you keep as much muscle on your body while you're taking the medication as possible. So a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to lose all this weight and then I'm going to start to work out. Wrong,
Right.
wrong. So if you keep, the more muscle you keep, the better it is that you'll keep the weight off. All right.
And what kind of ways or what kind of workout slash exercises do you recommend for muscle mass maintaining or gaining while you're on a GLP-1?
Yeah. So you want to do strength training. You want to do compound movements, right? Deadlifts, squats, bench press, pull ups, that sort of stuff, right? You want to make sure you're getting adequate amounts of protein and you want to make sure you're eating carbohydrates because they support your muscle growth and give you energy and everything as well. So you got to eat a certain way and you got to lift a certain way, but focus more on the multiple sets, 8 to 10 reps, strength training or hypertrophy type training while you're on the medication.
And that's a great point about how to maintain it while you're off it. I mean, while you're on it rather. But what do you recommend as a good transition off of the medication to keep those results? Let's say someone was taking it for 6 months and whether they were working out or not working out on the medication, what's a good way for them to transition off the medication and keep
Yeah,
results?
so as they're coming down off the medication is when they really want to start implementing those lifestyle changes. All right. I also think and recommend that you stay committed to doing the program or your medication until you hit your goal. So a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'm 5 pounds away. I'm going to start reducing my dosage and I'm going to lose the other 5 pounds. And that like doesn't really work that way. So I always tell people, make sure you stay on the medication until you hit your goal and give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, right? And then you want to gradually taper off the medication, right? That's where professional guidance of a healthcare professional, qualified, kind of helps because you got to taper down off of it. And as you taper down off of it, your eating has to become more strategic because you should be eating more calories as you're coming down, but those calories should be focused and strategic, and you want to make sure that as you're increasing it, you're not jumping too high too fast, and you want to make sure the macronutrient breakdown of those increased calories looks good. That's where I think a lot of people go off or kind of miss it. And then you want to make sure that your exercise routines as you come off kind of change because as you're coming off, now you're eating more food. You want to look for more of a caloric burn in your workouts, more of a metabolic workout versus a strength training workout.
As you taper off. And then in terms of how, I know it's probably different for everyone, but depending on, I guess, how high the dose or how low the dose, what does that usually look like in terms of transitioning off the medication?
Well, in our facility, the medical directors kind of or the medical staff kind of handles that titration down. So this is where people play doctor. And
Mhm.
this is where they kind of gain the weight back. So I believe it should be slow and steady, but I'm not the person who manages that process because it has to deal with medication, and I don't have the medical credential to do so. But I would recommend that you go down nice and slowly and consistently so that your appetite can be monitored as well as your caloric intake during that time so you don't see that bounce back or that rebound weight gain. But I don't want to tell someone how to do that because I don't technically have the qualifications, to do so. But I will tell you, people gain the weight back when they just jump off.
Mhm.
People gain the weight back when they don't do the work, meaning that they haven't learned how to live a healthy lifestyle. People gain the weight back when they have poor eating habits. Excuse me. People gain the weight back when they have just lost too much muscle, because when they start to eat more, their body doesn't have enough muscle to actually burn those calories, and so now they're being stored. And the people that don't exercise, a lot of people don't understand that exercise is better at maintaining weight than it is at losing weight. Everyone associates exercise with weight loss, but it's actually better at weight maintenance than it is at weight loss. So if you're trying to come off of this and you're not exercising and you're about to start eating more, well, you're going to gain weight.
Right. And
I don't know why somebody would expect something different, right? And if you're going to go back to your same old eating habits, guess what's going to happen? You're going to gain weight.
and you might
But
even
that's
gain
what happened.
more.
That's what brought you to the table in the first place.
Right.
Right. So that's why I say you got to have that mindset that I'm going to do this and I'm going to learn the changes that are necessary and I'm going to implement them and then I'm going to maintain them, because that person has been long gone. They did it, got what they needed out of it, and they moved on to the next thing.
And it sounds like if someone were taking these medications and not following a healthy lifestyle and just stop kind of cold turkey, they could actually sounds like they could potentially gain more back because they're going to store weight in a way that they may have not been storing it before.
Yeah. And a lot of people do. I mean, you can go online and see the stories.
Yeah,
You can
I've
see
seen
some of
it.
the research out there too. But none of those people learned how to eat.
Right.
So they just went back to the same habits. And I don't care what it is, medication, non-medication weight loss program. You do any weight loss program and you jump back to those old habits, you're going to jump back to the old scale weight. That's just the way it goes. It's just the way it goes.
Absolutely.
So it's not just the medication. The medication kind of gets a knock about it, but that's with anything. That's with anything. So, it may be a little bit more so with the medication because of some of the muscle loss, or because a lot of people who abuse these meds kind of drop too fast, too low. And then when it comes back, it comes back with a vengeance.
Right. Drop it fast, you'll gain it back fast if you're just
Sure,
not doing it the
sure,
right way.
sure. Yeah.
And then I know you did touch a little bit on this earlier in terms of healthy lifestyle and eating carbs and things of that nature. But is there anything else that you tell your clients who are on GLPs that about nutrition and exercise that you may have not mentioned specifically yet? Or are there specific things they should do differently, like on a
Yeah,
regular
well,
basis?
well, well. Number one, they gotta make sure they're consuming enough protein, right? Because that helps preserve the muscle, right? That's the role of it. So you got to make sure of that. But then again, it's not just about protein when it comes to preserving muscle. You have to eat carbs. You got to support your exercise and your body with carbohydrates. You don't want too much to where now you've got some fat storage, but you gotta consume the carbs and the fat as well. You want to make sure that you're eating balanced meals, so you're balancing your blood sugar, right? So that it's working alongside of the medication, not against it. And you want to make sure that you're eating fruits, vegetables, fiber, and drinking water so that you're not experiencing any of the constipation that may come from the slowing down of that gastric emptying.
That is another like common side effect I feel like I've heard about, right? Like constipation, nausea.
Yeah, it's a side effect, but it's a side effect oftentimes based on how people are eating.
And if you're
Right.
not
So if
doing
you're
it right.
slowing down that gastric emptying process, right, because of the medication, something's got to move that along. So
Mhm.
if you're not eating fruits and vegetables and fiber and you're not drinking water, well, is that the medication or is that you?
That's a great question. It could just be you.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, that doesn't mean that because you ate fruits and vegetables and fiber and drank a lot of water that you're not going to experience some of that. I'm not saying that. But if I can tell you what, if you're just eating a protein diet and doing no carbs and this and that and you're constipated, well, like you caused that or you had a hand in it.
And this is why it's so helpful to go to you and well-versed expert in this field, because although this seems like common knowledge to you, I'm sure a lot of our listeners, and I'm sitting here not knowing all these things myself, it's not common knowledge for a lot of people, especially I'm sure people who just jump in and maybe order this online don't know all these things. So this is like,
No, but they've gone online and they've done their research. And so they might have some kind of idea. There's enough people talking about it and social media and all that. They're not telling them how to do it properly, but people are shoving protein in their mouth. There's not a whole lot of people doing the carbs. And I still run into people who are fasting on these medications. Nuts. Absolutely not. That is
and for
not a
the
smart thing to do at all. At
and for
all. You're just taking your blood sugar even lower. So you, again, like I told you, if your ultimate plan is to come off of these medications, you have to learn what a true healthy lifestyle looks like. Not just nutrition and exercise, stress management, proper sleep hygiene, drinking enough water, all those things have to come into play. But, it's real important that you eat to support yourself, not only while you're on the medication, but learn how to do it for when you're off the medication or want to come down on off the medication. Real important.
and commenting on fasting, I've heard that sometimes, even though this is not technically an appetite suppressant, you might have a lot less of an appetite while taking this. So I feel like I've heard a lot of people not potentially saying they're fasting on purpose, but just not eating because they're not hungry. So it sounds like you still have to force yourself to have some kind of small level of protein and carb intake, regardless whether you're hungry or not, correct?
Yeah. I wouldn't use the word force. You do have to eat. You do have to remind yourself to eat, right?
Hmm.
But, and then once you eat, you want to eat until you feel full, right? The word force makes me think you're eating against your will, and that's going to get you sick.
Right.
That's going to get you sick. So, but the other side of that is you do have to eat.
Hmm.
You do have to eat while you're on these medications. And we want you to eat while you're on the medications. So when I see people saying, oh, I didn't eat much today, or I didn't eat it all today, or I just had, some of this today. And it's like, that's not even 500 calories. That's not right. That's not right. Like that's not good, sustainable weight loss. It's not quality weight loss, right? And so you do have to eat. And maybe what I would say to some of those people is maybe your dose is too high. Maybe you're taking too much of the medication and maybe you need some of that appetite back,
Right.
right? So that's where the medical advice comes in. And that's why it's important.
And this is why we all need to do this with a medical professional. We need your guidance.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the success is much higher. I mean, when I look at that FDA study, that over 16 months, how much people lost on Wegovy and Zepbound, we blow those numbers out the water. And I'm not talking 16 months either. And we blow it out the water with people who aren't as heavy as the people who were in the study, right? So the heavier people tend to lose weight faster, um, and in larger amounts, but we're able to do that with people who are smaller. And so it's 100% because of the medical screening and medical instruction. It's because of the ongoing support, and it's because of the lifestyle, eating, exercise, and knowledge that we're sharing with the people.
And I know you just rattled off a few of the names. So there's like Ozempic, there's Wegovy, there's Mounjaro, there's compounded ones. There's so many. Do you have any opinion on, I guess, the differences about them, if one is better than another, or a semaglutide, or the other one
Do
you
I
mentioned,
have an opinion?
GP? I'm
I
sure you
always have
do.
an opinion. Come on, Layla. I always have an opinion.
I know, that's why I want to hear your opinion on these.
Will say this. I will say this because I don't want to be out here supporting, other people who aren't compensating me for it. Um, and I don't want to talk bad about the industry or the medications. But the research says that there's better weight loss and less side effects with Zepbound versus Wegovy. And when I say Zepbound versus Wegovy, that's the same as saying Mounjaro versus Ozempic. That's the same as saying tirzepatide versus semaglutide. Have I seen that in my clinic? Yes. Have I seen that with myself when I tried these medications over a year or so ago to see how my body responded? Yes. So more weight loss, less side effects. I've seen that personally with the tirzepatide.
Such as episode. And based on, like, let's say someone who wants to have a goal of 20 pounds versus someone who wants to have a goal of 100 pounds, does that change what medication you might prefer to recommend? Or
Recommend the medication. So I'm going to say that the medical director and the individual or the medical professional would have to give them that, would would determine what medication they do. And that's how it's done in our clinic. I don't have any say over what people do and or anything like that, but I read research,
Mhm.
right? And I can tell you my own personal experience, and I can tell you what I see with my own eyeballs. You know what I mean? So
Right.
so 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 that's what I can share. But which medication you should use based on your health history and based off of your blood work, that has to be done with a medical professional who's knowledgeable to make sure you get rolling and you're on the right track.
Absolutely. And I know, even just speaking about GLPs in general, there's so much stigma around using medication for weight loss in general. And some people might see it as quote unquote cheating or taking the easy way out. So we know you have an opinion. So what's your
Yeah,
take on
I got an opinion on that too.
that?
What's my opinion on that? I just think that that's bullshit. It's for a bunch of reasons. But I'll say this: if a man doesn't have erectile dysfunction and he takes Viagra, is he cheating? We don't say, oh, he's cheating, right?
Right.
If a woman dyes her hair, is she cheating? If someone does Botox, are they cheating on youth? Right? If someone does hormone replacement therapy, are they cheating?
Hmm.
So I don't know why, if somebody has been obese their whole life and there's medication that can help them, that's cheating. I don't know why, if somebody's experiencing perimenopause or menopausal weight gain, who takes medication to kind of help support their journey or for losing that weight, is cheating, right? And I don't know why, if somebody who's stuck, maybe they're eating right, maybe they're exercising, but they're in a different body than they desire and they want to lose 25 pounds and the medication can help. I don't know why that's called cheating. And I don't know why it's frowned upon, you know, but I do know, when you're not in midlife and you're much younger, eating less and moving more worked, especially if you weren't eating right and especially if you weren't moving. But once you get to midlife, that it's not the same. Insulin sensitivity sets in, hormone changes are going on. It's a much more complicated game, and these medications are helping people to get the success that they need. And if they implement the healthy lifestyle with it, then they're good. But I wouldn't call it cheating. That's a little bit of kind of like a hating game going on, and people are frowned upon, and part of it too that I see is people don't want to share with other people their successes that they may have used this medication to help them get to where they are, because they don't want to be frowned upon, and they don't want to be seen as a cheater, and so on and so forth. And I just, I just don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I mean, it is what it is. And there are people out there, and I won't deny this, there are people out there who should exercise and who say, I'm not going to exercise, I'm just going to take this medicine and I'm going to lose weight. And I wouldn't call them a cheater. I'd say that they're not using the medication properly. And I would say that they're probably abusing the situation. But I also would say that in the long term, they're going to get exactly what they deserve. And so if that means that they're going to lose muscle that they shouldn't have, if that means that they're going to be stuck taking that medication for the rest of their life, if that means that they're going to have unhealthy experiences on it because they didn't make the changes that they should have, I'm happy to hear that. Good for them. I want them to suffer those consequences. But I still wouldn't necessarily, quote unquote, call it cheating.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like it's super helpful for anyone who does want to lose weight, especially if you're doing it the right way. And for those, like you said, who could have been obese their whole life, and now finally there is something to help. And some people may have never
Sure.
worked out, and some people may have worked out and dieted and exercised their whole life and never seen the results that they're able to see with the help
Oh, yeah.
of these
Obesity is a
medications.
complex issue.
Hmm.
A tool like medicine to help is one that should be, utilized.
Right.
I mean,
Utilize
it's
and
just that simple. Somebody's got high blood pressure, and they're taking a tool to help bring the blood pressure back down. It's medicine, you know. So you know, it's the people who are the gym people who happen to be fit, who happen to be healthy by doing what they do. They're the ones kind of calling it cheating. But I do that, and I don't call it cheating at all.
and everyone's different because they may have personally never experienced not being able to lose weight. Maybe they've been healthy
Sure.
their whole life, and diet and exercise has worked with them, versus someone who may have underlying issues or health complications that won't allow them to just go to the gym and
Absolutely.
work out and lose weight. So I hear
Absolutely.
you. I agree with that. And Doug, I do want to ask you, if you could give one piece of advice to anyone who is considering a GLP-1, what would it be?
Get great medical advice from someone who's experienced and knowledgeable in the medical weight loss field. So that may not just be your doctor, because your general practitioner may not be completely knowledgeable about the medication. Yes, they can prescribe it, but they may not be overall knowledgeable enough to like really give you the support and the insight that you need. So you got to get the right and qualified medical professional, along with a health coach or a trainer who's knowledgeable in nutrition, or a nutritionist or a dietitian. You got to get that side of the table also. So if you can get both of those, then you are going to do very well on your journey for weight loss, and you'll have the support and you'll have the knowledge, and you'll start to work towards improving your lifestyle. That's the number one thing that people should do when they go to utilize these medications, if they want to be successful, and if they want to actually come off of the medication and maintain a healthy lifestyle. So those two combined, that combination, boom, your chances of success are have just skyrocketed. And you won't be one of those 30% people who like are gone in a month. And if 30% are gone in a month, how many are gone in 6 months without reaching their goal? So you don't want to be that kind of statistic. So get the right people, get the right help from the professionals who do it day in and day out. And then make sure you got some health coaching and some knowledge that's someone who's supporting you with that to make sure that you're having a successful journey and you're getting consistent results towards your goal.
Absolutely. And then I know one quick question I just thought about for those who may be listening who may want to contact you and in terms of using you and your clinic with your expertise and offering assistance to anyone who wants to try a GLP. This is only done in clinic, right? With the scale, or do you do
Yeah,
any?
so most of our work is done in clinic, but we work with people remotely, especially with the coaching side of it, because we can get on a Zoom call and, we can do custom nutrition from afar and, we can do a lot of the exercise and all that. Most of that is done through it's app based. So we can work with it. And then the medical staff does telehealth as well. So we do face to face and telehealth. So there's opportunities, we can work with people remotely, especially on the coaching side. In terms of the medication side, they need to be within the state of Connecticut that we operate in order for us to be able to prescribe the medication. But like I said, a lot of our clients, even in state, they don't get the medication from us. It's covered under their insurance. And we just coach the hell out of them so that they can get the best results.
Awesome. No, that sounds great. I'm sure a lot of people listening would like to connect with you in terms of potential coaching and things like that. So,
Yeah, CT Medical Weight Loss and Beyond. That's the name of the company. Our website, ctmed, M-E-D, weightloss.com, ctmedweightloss.com. And there's a place to schedule an appointment if they want to there. And they can always call the clinic. They can
amazing.
also give us a call.
Amazing. So for everyone listening who's been curious about a GLP-1, maybe on a GLP-1 and needs more guidance, now you know who to contact for the best support it sounds like you can get. Very knowledgeable. And for myself and for all the listeners today, thank you so much for schooling us and giving us all this knowledge that we will not just find on TikTok or things like that. So thank you so much for all of the knowledge today. And this was a great episode of Midlife Unleashed, and I can't wait to talk to you on our next episode.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too.